taster, master of everything here at Adventurous Stills, correct?
Jack of all trades, master of, well, I don't know.
Yeah, so today, for all of you who aren't tracking what Adventurous Stills is a craft distillery here in Arizona. So unfortunately, not everyone, out there watching it will be able to try your whiskey because you're still very stuck to the Arizona area. Yep. But of those of you who are in Arizona, you'll be able to actually, get your products and try them. So hopefully you guys see this, you like this, and you guys go out there and try this. So before I talk too much, because I have a tendency of doing that, Kelly, please introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name is Kelly Laddick. I'm one of the founders and the current sole owner of Adventurous Stills. As Stephen said, we're a small batch craft distillery in Tempe, Arizona. And I think we'll talk about a lot of interesting things having to do with the craft whiskey business in general. And even if you're not in Arizona, you can't try our products, that's okay, because surely, wherever you are, there's likely to be another guy doing stuff like us with the same sorts of themes. I think this is what we try to do, what craft distilling really should be, the essence of keeping it local and doing small batch and really real craft processes. There's lots of people out doing source products and things like that, but what we do is it's the way it should be done, and you have to go out there and find one. If it's not us, go out and find one in your state.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I love about what you all do is just that you do different things that are all local. It's all, not your run-of-the-mill average, whiskey distillery. You're not doing the same thing that everyone else in, Texas. I mean, not Texas. Texas also does have a little bit of their own little craft environment.
Sure.
I mean, not little, it's huge at this point, but they have their own craft side as well. But like Kentucky, there's 1,000 Kentucky distilleries out there. We don't need more bourbon. That's going to taste just like Wild Turkey 101 or Buffalo Trace. So you kind of draw us out of the lines and do different things.
Right. Yeah. If you've not had our Peralta bourbon, which part of us have a little pour up. We do a couple of funny things in our mash bill. You're from Kentucky and you look at our mash bill, you're like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
For starters, we got about 2% chocolate malt and 2% caramel malt, which, a little tiny bit of that stuff goes a long way and produces this chocolatey back note, which is pretty unique to bourbon. It's not a chocolate bourbon, it's bourbon, but it's got this subtle chocolatey back note on the back end. So it's fun and different, but it also makes the bourbon a little sweeter. And so when we were crafting this mash bill, we said, well, what can we do to counteract that sweetness? And our idea was we put about 12% caramelized rye in the mash bill. So it's got this rye spiciness to it. In addition, it kind of counterbalances that chocolatey. And bottom line is it just ends up being a different bourbon. Mm-hmm. It's still bourbon, like it or you don't, but it's different. It's fun. It's something we kind of engineered to produce a certain kind of taste. And I've never tasted another bourbon like it.
Okay. So the reason, because this was going to be one of the questions I was going to ask, how do you kind of settle on that mash bill? Because I feel like your rye is more stereotypical of a mash bill than your bourbon is. Your bourbon it's wild, it's different, it's kind of out of there. So you kind of just settled on that to balance it out essentially, because the chocolate malt made it a little bit too sweet.
I wish I could say that with years of experience and expertise and consultation and all this stuff. The reality is, I brewed beer for 30-something years, and when you brew a lot of beer, you try a bunch of different types of grains, and I had a fair idea what different grains would do, and we just kind of sat down with a piece of paper and said, well, what are we going to try? And these are the options, and we kind of penciled it out and said, well, this is kind of what I think is going to happen, and that's what we did. I mean, we've tweaked it a tiny bit over the 6 years or so we've been making Peralta bourbon, but it's fundamentally the same. It's same thing actually absolutely applies to the rye. On a whim, we thought it'd be a good idea to put 10% wheat in a high rye mash bill, so 90% rye. And also kind of on a whim, I like rye whiskeys. I've been a huge rye whiskey fan for a long time. A lot of rye whiskeys are really dry and sharp, and just no sweetness to them. And that can be off-putting to novice drinkers. Yeah. And so our idea is, well, let's try 5% caramelized rye there, put a little caramel top note to soften that entry. At the very beginning taste you get, and it worked. We haven't toyed with it at all. It's great.
Yeah, and that wheat would for sure also kind of like soften
soften the whole approach. That's kind of through the mid palate and the whole thing. But that caraway rye on the top is designed to soften that sharp, the beginning top note that you get.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I like to say we're all scientific about it, but mostly it's lucky.
Yeah, it's luck and trial and error that kind of
Yeah.
got you.
Yeah, well, yeah. Some of our other mash bills have been a lot of trial and error, but not those two.
Okay. So like these are your two core lines, as well as obviously your Fossil Creek, which is a 4-grain smoked whiskey, and you use, what is that? White oak.
Sure.
American white oak.
Sure. So everything's aged in white oak casks, but the unique thing about our Fossil Creek whiskey, in fact, all of our campfire style whiskeys, we made a hickory and a mesquite, and I've got a pecan in the works. I'm thinking about a cherry smoked. So all of these whiskeys use the same mash bill, 4-grain mash bill, and then it's we do a 2-stage aging process. So the first step happens actually in plastic, big 55-gallon HDPE totes or drums, tanks, I guess.
Yeah, those ones.
Yeah,
right back there.
And so we'll take 50 gallons or so of the white spirit off the still, and we'll dump in about 8 board feet of very charred white oak. I char the crap out of it, and there's a whole science to that.
Yeah.
It's kind of the proprietary part. Getting that proper char is really tricky. Anyway, dump that in and let it float around for about 4 months. The oak gets totally saturated and sinks to the bottom of the tank. At that point, we pump the spirit out into a cask and let it sit there for a year or more after that. Because there's magic that happens in a cask that does not happen in plastic. We can pick up all these smoky notes, but all the magic things that happen in a cask just are not going to happen in a plastic tank. So a secondary step in the cask really brings out the smoothness and all the other things, just the wonderful things that happen in a cask. But you also, conversely, you can't pick up all this extra smokiness that we get in our campfire style whiskeys in a cask. There's just not that much smoke available. So this is a different way of getting that smokiness compared to a typical, most smoky whiskeys use a smoked malt.
Yeah. You usually smoke the malt to dry it out before it ferments, if I'm correct.
Before it germinates.
Yes. I've watched a few videos online of how distilling works, and I've taken your tour 1,000 times.
Exactly.
So you smoke the actual whiskey, and you put charred oak inside the drum with it?
Well, we don't really. I mean, the smoking of the whiskey happens when we put that charred wood in the tank with the white spirit fresh off the still.
So it picks up the smoke flavors from those charred oak.
Wood. Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. Which gives us the flexibility to do it with mesquite or pecan or hickory. So we get these really interesting, fun flavors. You can't make a cask out of pecan.
No, that would not hold.
Exactly.
Yeah, because I just recently got your mesquite one, and I was kind of blown away with how mesquite-y it was.
Yeah.
From having the Fossil Creek. So the Fossil Creek, it's an approachable smoke. That's the way I like to call it. It's very soft, has a little bit of like a campfire smoky bit, but it's like kind of I don't want to say non-descriptive, but it's a very gentle smoke, I guess. It's not abrasive in any which way. It's for sure not peat.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so
not peat.
It's very easy, nice, approachable, and I was expecting that, but like a little mesquite, but that was so much more mesquite than the Fossil Creek was. So I was like, okay, he must just like crank this thing up in my head.
To be honest with you, I mean, so we use local mesquite, and so it doesn't show up in nice, pristine plants. It's pieces of sticks and stuff, and I cut it up into reasonable sizes and smoke it. And it's kind of a wild guess of how much is 8 board feet equivalent. So we just kind of do some. Hopefully that's right. But it's mesquite is so aromatic that a roughly equivalent amount gives it a lot more smokiness.
So I know we've talked about it on the side, but for those of you who are those out there who do not know, out of all of your core line, so the bourbon, the rye, as well as the Fossil Creek, which is the smoked one, which one is your favorite and why?
Well, bourbon is super popular, and ours is unique. It sells really well. The bourbon and the Fossil Creek are the top sellers that kind of go back and forth depending month to month, which one's the more popular of them. But truthfully, I said before, I'm a rye guy. I love ryes. But I really love our rye. I think it's the best of our standard line of products that we make. And to my palate, it's that magic 5% caramelized rye that makes this rye so great. It's got a lot of rye spice, but it's not so bold and sharp on the front end. If you just sip it neat, it's creamy and smooth. I think that's a fantastic experience.
Yeah, to me, it tastes like So out there, like the two main ryes are like barely legal ryes, where it's a boatload of corn and rye in there, or it's like the 95.5 rye, or at least to me that's what it is. It's what I imagine like a Texas take on a rye, or for everyone out there. I mean, Texas is probably the closest correlation, but Arizona has a very similar climate,
Absolutely.
so I call it Southwest aging.
Right.
But like out of all of those, it reminds me of exactly what like a barely legal, Southwest age rye would taste like.
Yeah. I don't,
Although I have not had a single one that is like that. Like I've never had a good Texas rye that I'm aware of.
Okay. I feel I don't know any Texas distillers.
Mm-hmm.
I've met one, but I feel like a kindred spirit with those guys.
Yeah.
They suffer the same situation that we've got: brutal hot summers, really dry spring and fall, and that presents some challenges when you're trying to keep spirit inside a wooden cask for a long period of time. And so, any of those guys that can make it work, hats off to those guys. It's cool. But the spirits you mentioned, I haven't tried either of them. Sadly, in this business,
Okay.
I drink a lot of my own cooking.
Yeah. I was just about to ask you that. Out of what you have had, that's not your whiskey. What's your like favorite go-to, or what do you like that's not your own?
Yeah.
Not that I guess you drink a lot of that, but
Yeah, I mean, I do make an effort. If we're out and about, I'm always looking at the whiskey list. Okay, because I'm just not a guy that goes out and spends $150 on a bottle. I just don't do it. But I will go out and spend $25 on a shot because I want to try something.
Yeah.
And so I do enjoy doing that. But two things come to mind, I guess. And speaking of Texas distillers, I shout out to the guys at Ironwood. This is kind of a funny story. It's Patrick
Larkin
or
Patrick Cohn. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you, Patrick Cohn. So he's a big advocate.
Yeah.
for the Ironwood guys.
Yeah, I saw Patrick yesterday.
Yeah. So he was in the Explorers Club, and he'd been talking about these guys a little bit. And one day he calls me up and says, "Hey, they're going to be in town. They're doing this intro. They're bringing their spirits into Total Wines, and they'd like to come see you." And I'm like, "Sure, sounds great." And so they come in, and they're nice folks, and it's the guy and a couple of them, and we spend an hour just kind of talking spirits, and then we sit down at the bar afterward, and I'm going to try some of theirs, and they're going to try some of mine. And so I pour some shots, and they pour some shots, and I taste it. And, holy shit, guys, we got to have a different conversation. This is really good. It's a lot of people show up here and want to talk, and maybe they know things, maybe they don't. But as soon as I tasted their spirit, like, oh wow, these guys really have it going on. So big shout out to those guys. I've never had anything of theirs that I don't like. But something more common, other.
Sorry, I'm just saying cheers.
Okay.
Continue on listening.
Now I've lost my train of thought. It was
So outside of Iron Room.
Oh, yeah. Gosh, now I'm having a brain fart.
Although I do agree with Iron Room, because I have had their brand ambassador on, Josh Galladay, I believe. I hope that's his name. Josh, if I butchered your name, I'm sorry. But I had him and Patrick on, and I went through a bunch of their stuff. And, Patrick mules a bunch of their stuff from Texas. And that's why I saw him yesterday. I have like 7 of their bottles at home. I absolutely love them.
Right.
But no, outside of them.
Yeah, outside of them. So the other thing this is one of my favorite spirits from before I started the distillery. Michter's 10-year.
Okay.
It's just, I think that's like, it's $70 or $80. It's kind of high, but not. It's a
10-year rye.
Yeah, it's a great spirit.
Now it's like $150, but
Is it $150 now?
That's inflation.
Yeah, damn it.
That makes sense because Michter's is like I said, it's I believe it's a barely legal rye, so it's a little bit of a sweeter side of rye.
Okay.
In theory, I've never had Michter's 10, unfortunately, because again, it's $150.
Yeah.
Because I could buy like 3 of your ryes for that, so at least that.
Exactly.
If a bottle costs over like $75 nowadays, it has to be a lot for me to want to go out and get it. Like I either have to be supporting the cause I care about, or I have to have had a bunch of their stuff previously and loved it. If not, I have no skin in that game.
Yeah, exactly.
Whiskey's getting expensive.
Yeah. I said the same thing. I was a wine guy before I was a whiskey guy, and there's a kind of cutoff point. And for me, again, this is kind of old news, but 10 years ago, my cutoff point was about $25. I think wines get a ton better until you get about 25 bucks. And then they're all pretty good after that.
Yeah.
Does it really matter? Do you have to spend $100 on a bottle of wine? I don't think you do.
No, yeah. It's a concept of, degradation or whatever, like degrading value over
There's an
time
economics
period.
to
Like
it.
it's just
Diminishing returns.
Yeah, diminishing
That's the
returns.
one.
There we go. English words, things of that nature. By the way, now that there's a few people in chat hanging out and talking, sorry, I'm gonna be a little off and on chat. But if you have any questions, put them in chat. Ask Kelly them, or Kelly could potentially even read them. But yeah, if you have any questions, let us know.
For sure.
We'll ask them, because I've had a lot of conversations with you at this point. So
For sure.
Yeah.
I cannot read them. They'll see a lot.
Oh yeah, no, it's hard. That's like I said. Normally I have a huge TV, so I'm used to being able to not have to squint. I'm gonna have to tap to see things.
Yeah.
But it is what it is.
Okay.
So I know a little bit about this, but I actually don't know the whole story. So I know you retired as some form of engineer, correct?
Yeah, I was a semiconductor guy up until the housing crash of 08, 09, and got laid off and decided I was done with that, ready to retire, and turned out that was a little younger to retire, and so I did a number of things and was kind of fishing around for something fun to do, and I was hanging out with some friends, and this is kind of, at that time I was just kind of starting to get into whiskey, and these guys that I'd become friends with were into whiskey more than I was, and they had some really good stuff, and we tried some of this and some of that. I always like to tell the story that one of the guys, Steve, we used to get together a couple times a week and go drink beers and do silly stuff. And one time he shows up, he says, "Guys, we have got to make some whiskey. We got to make some ourselves." And I'm like, "Yeah, sure, whatever." And then the next time we got together, he's carrying under each arm, he's got a 3.5 gallon alembic pot still. He went out and bought them on eBay, and we're like, "Oh, I guess we're making some whiskey. You're serious?" And that's kind of how it got started. It was just this whim. And we made a couple of rums, and then we made a version of our Fossil Creek whiskey. It was the very first real whiskey that we made.
Yeah.
We made it in my other buddy's Jeff's living room of all crazy places. We mashed it in a 55-gallon drum. It was just the craziest fiasco. It's a miracle we didn't destroy his house. But in the end, it actually came up pretty good. And at some point, I think we were drinking, and I don't know what happened. We had this idea to turn it into a business. And, one thing led to another. Here we are. It's kind of the story.
Now this whole
and now we're sitting on 4,000 gallons of whiskey behind me, and a couple hundred barrels, and it's really exploded.
I could take a few thousand of those off, don't you worry.
There you go. But the mission has kind of evolved too. We started off as just it was a hobby, just guys being guys, just whatever. But as we got into it, we just we were always into the notion of craft and different, and doing something unexpected. That's why the name exists. Adventurous. Adventurous takes on existing spirit styles. We make things you've heard of, but we've got these funny twists like chocolate malt and bourbon, things like that. But really latching on to the notion of craft and the notion of local, bringing in lots of local grains. Right now in this last year, my average mash bill contained about 65% locally grown grains, and I've just recently nailed a source of locally grown barley that's actually malted in Utah, but about as local as we can make it right now. And that's going to bump us up to about 88% locally grown, which is super cool, to be able to use in Arizona. This is a farming community, but it's super cool to be able to bring that level of locality to this. And it's done here. We do a grain to bottle. Everything it's in-house, and it's done by me and just a few guys that live in Tempe. And so we really our vision has gotten honed into something more specific and cool.
Yeah, supporting local businesses and the things you care about.
Right.
Being able to actually inflict change in your local area based off of your business, spending money instead of going to a cheaper distributor. You're going to something that's local.
Yeah, that's exactly right. When we started, we used the vast majority of our grains came from Brewer Supply Group. They're the guys that most of the brewers in town buy their grains from. And it's fine. I happen to know one of the guys there, and so we had a relationship. And I call him up, and a few days later, a pallet of grains would show up, and off we go. But then I've had an opportunity to get to know some guys in the business of grain R&Ds, fantastic group of guys. And they're working with local farmers, and local farmers are doing things the rye we use to grow in the Verde Valley, and it's a counter-cyclical grain, so it needs most of its water in the winter when the Verde River flows high. There's lots of water available, and then as the Verde drops, the watering stops for the rye. They stop watering it from, like, as I understand it, April-ish.
Okay.
And so it doesn't draw water from the Verde when the Verde's going low, and so it's providing opportunities for farmers to do cool things to keep the grains local and improve the environment.
Yeah.
So those guys are making money without screwing the environment. Just love those kind of continuities you can put together when you keep things in your community.
Yeah, and like, I mean, you end up buying grain from him, and then he ends up going out and buying a bottle of whiskey, and then buying your whiskey or whatever.
Perhaps.
And then, like, it becomes a circle of, economic growth within a smaller community.
Sure.
No,
Yeah, I don't
awesome.
know, I don't know how these guys figure this out, but supposedly when you buy a bottle of whiskey from me, something like 80% of the dollars stay in our local economy.
Yeah.
Whereas if you go buy Victor's, 20% of the dollars stay in our local economy.
Yeah.
So that's
You
a
know,
lot to be said for that.
I was surprised about, like, the percentages of distribution, and we don't need to get into that because that's a whole, like, nightmare of a conversation. But one thing I did want to talk, because I know we're about 20 minutes deep. This will probably be a little on the shorter side since, we still got to unpack all this stuff at some point. But one of the things that I absolutely love about Adventurous Stills, not only the fact that you make, these three amazing whiskeys, or what I think are three amazing whiskeys, you have that whole Adventurous Club, which I think it's incredible. I think it's cool. You basically, essentially, the way I describe it to people is you experiment and you kind of see what you can do with whiskey, because you don't know what you don't know. And especially in Arizona, especially once it hits a cask, you don't know what's going to happen until you try it at that point. Yeah. So you do a lot of, I call it experimenting or limited releases, which I think I don't know any craft distillery that does as many limited stuff as you do.
Yeah, I've gone off the rails completely. Stop me before I distill again. Yeah, that is one of the funnest things about it. We have 5 standard products: our bourbon, our rye, Fossil Creek, a rum, and a craft style vodka that we make a lot of, and that's fine. But at least once a quarter, often 2 or 3 times a quarter, we'll go off and do something completely different. And sometimes there are things that we've done before, like I think we have our 3rd version of 100% blue corn whiskey in cask now, and that's cool. It's fantastic.
Is that the one that you finished in the Twisted Blue Corn?
Right.
Peach
the prior 2
brandy
times,
finish?
once we just did it straight out of a new charred oak cask. The second time we did it finishing in that very cask. That's a peach brandy cask.
Okay.
And so that was just a wonderful spirit. And then we've got another one that I believe it comes up this summer. And we'll see if it's ready, and I haven't decided what to do with it, but it'll probably get some kind of cask finish, something else.
Okay.
Cool. It'll be fun.
Yeah, I
don't
love
know if
that
it's
peach brandy.
Yeah, it'd be
And I
hard
know
to top the
everyone
peach
loves
brandy.
that one.
Yeah, that's great. But yeah, we've done any number of things. One of the wildest ones, you talk about what you don't know what's going to happen in cask. We did a quinoa whiskey, and this was inspired by the guys out of West Virginia. What the hell's the name of that distillery? It's got the 3 guys
West
in black and white.
Virginia.
It's a black and white label with 3 guys kind of walking along. Let's see.
Tres Amigos. That's
No,
what I
no,
think about when I see
that's right.
3.
Yeah, it's like
silhouettes.
they're on horses, but yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we took inspiration from these guys. The guys who were doing quinoa whiskey. Let's try. And in order for it to be a quinoa whiskey, it's got to be at least 51% quinoa. So we went out and scrounged around about 510 pounds of quinoa, which is pretty damn expensive because nobody buys 500 pounds of quinoa.
Yeah,
right?
that's a lot of
That's a lot of
quinoa.
And then the rest was malt. And you've seen dried quinoa. It's like big sand. It's super, super small. And so we had to modify our mill in order to effectively mill it. And then we had to run it through 3 times in order to get it, ground down to the point that we could make effective use of the starches and get the flavors out of the quinoa. And so anyway, ran it through the distillation process, came off. It was kind of nutty and warm. And it was fine. Not really exceptionally interesting.
Did it remind you of wheat at all? Like distilling wheat? Because I have no idea how distilling wheat is. But over the last weekend, a bunch of people said that the Infinity Cask, which I know that's partially that quinoa whiskey, was like kind of very soft. And I like almost weeded. Like I unfortunately didn't get to try the quinoa whiskey, but
yeah, right. Yeah, that's as close as you can
Yeah.
get. It's an infinity cast right
Yeah,
now.
I like
That's
that
right.
one, and it tastes kind of like your bourbon, but if it
Yeah.
was like weeded and kind of like softer almost.
Honestly, I don't remember very clearly, so I'm just looking at my notes.
Okay.
And my notes didn't have very much remarkable to say about it. It's like, it tastes fine. I think it's going to be okay. But then we put it in cask for 2 years, and when it came out, we were just floored that it tasted just vividly like hatch chili peppers, which is not really what you're looking for in a whiskey.
Yeah,
right?
That would be a hard pass for me.
I did not like it, but it sold super fast because it was just so different and wild. And that's an experiment. I was just talking to a guy this week. We're off hunting around for some more because of this infinity cast, which just happens to be a blend of about 70% of a special bourbon we made, and then about 30% of this quinoa. And together, they're really nice.
Yeah, it's an incredible whiskey.
A little pour.
Yeah. Well, we could get into that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had it one time at the bar. That's one of the bottles I don't own, but I had it one time when I came to the bar a little while back, and I remember liking it.
Yeah, it's it's mostly bourbon, and the quinoa is still there to give it a kind of a spicy note, but it's not nearly as hatch chili. It's just kind of warm and maybe a little peppery.
Okay. And question, as far as distribution wise goes, any plans on distributing outside of Arizona? I know you only distribute in Arizona at the time, and I know you're trying to grow your footprint in Arizona, if you want to say. But eventually, is there ambition or goals to eventually go outside of Arizona, or do you still kind of want to keep it local?
Local is a lot of what we talk about.
Because I know that's like the vision essentially is to support local, keep everything local and craft.
Right. So, my horizon right now is short enough that, what I'm looking forward to is getting a better exposure in the Arizona.
Yeah.
What we supply is such a tiny fraction of what just happens in Arizona. There's a lot of running room for us in this state before we'd even really seriously contemplate going outside of it. So as soon as you go to California, for example.
Now that I'm like, I looked for the hatch chili and I was like, oh, that is hatch chili.
Yeah.
It's a hatch chili bourbon. Right. It's not even very chocolatey.
No, this is a different bourbon. It wasn't Peralta bourbon.
Okay.
It was a different bourbon.
That's a whole nother rabbit hole.
Yeah, exactly.
I oddly do kind of like that.
It's quite good. Of the different, some of these Explorers Club.
I like that.
That's great. We have one other that I also really like, but all of them are good and interesting. Even the quinoa. It was a crazy experiment. We just went off and tried it. So, like I said, I'm off trying to find I want about 250 pounds of quinoa. I'd like to make a purpose-built bourbon with quinoa in it. I think it would be fun.
I would love to see that finish because I feel like you could do something fun with that like kind of spiciness and finish. I mean, that's a whole experiment. It could go horribly wrong, but I don't know anything.
It never
goes
that wrong.
It'll still get you drunk.
Yeah,
Tim, if you'd like to try some of it, let me know. We can hand deliver some stuff to you.
Yeah, we have. We're running through
deliver some stuff to you.
We're running through the very last few bottles of some of these Explorers Club releases we've got. I think I was just doing inventory today. I think there's 10 more bottles of Infinity Cast.
Yeah.
So if we want one,
we sold a few of these over the weekend.
We did. So Infinity Cast is one. We just go off and try all these different things we've done. We've got millet. We've got 100% sorghum in cask. Millets in cask.
What's sorghum? I've heard that, but I don't know what that is.
Yeah, boy, I'm city boy here. I've seen it grow in the fields. It looks a lot like corn, and I gather it's like a derivative of corn, but it's apparently a smaller cob. And, I wish I knew more than that. I don't know, sadly.
4-leaf. I will buy a bottle of this, and I will hand deliver some samples to you. You know how that works. So I know you have a bunch of fun experiments I call them experiments, but honestly, I liked every single one of them. I haven't had a bad Explorers release. I've had some I've liked better than others.
Sure.
Some that have grown on me, like the peanut butter, what was that? That was a stout peanut butter porter that you then distilled. It was super weird and funky. At the club release, I was like, and then I took it home and I had it with a cigar, and
Oh.
that became my cigar whiskey
That's
for like
interesting.
2 months
Okay.
until now
So
it's
you're-
gone. But
Yeah, right.
I truly enjoyed it, and
Right.
I have this bad habit of I try to not drink all my limited special release whiskeys because like I'm like, oh, I can make content out of this. But like the nice thing is like since everything's so craft, I can't really make content out of your stuff. So I can just enjoy it.
There you
And,
go.
like,
There you go.
I
That's what whiskey's for,
absolutely
man.
enjoyed that whiskey.
Yeah, that's funny. I agree with you. That was not one of my favorite things. We did 3 or 4 what I call COVID refugee
Mhm.
whiskeys.
Yeah, that the 99 level.
Yeah, the 99. There's a Wren House beer that's still in cask. That I don't know. It hasn't really done anything interesting yet. We're still waiting on it. And one other, I can't remember what it was. But anyway, these are beers that were made by local breweries during
Mhm.
COVID, and they'd make a brew, and then they'd be closed for 2 months for lockdowns, or whatever.
Yeah.
And the beers were flat, whatever. And so we rescued them and turned them into whiskey, and
Mhm.
some are good, and some are interesting, and
Yeah,
some are
fun and
great.
interesting.
Yeah, exactly. The
I like-
99
yeah,
is,
99 I think is probably one of the better ones.
well, it is sure different.
Yeah, it's
Right? It's so it's
It's
distilled
not a
from a
traditional.
Kolsch.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
not a
certainly.
traditional
That's
whiskey.
for sure. It'd be considered a single malt, right? Because Kolsch is going to be 100% malt, right? But the hops in the Kolsch, for whatever reason, just produce this lemony flavored whiskey.
Yeah,
And you just never know really what you're going to get. Casks are amazing.
yeah, because Kolsch, I'm probably pronouncing that horribly wrong, but I've had quite a few of those before, and I don't remember any of them being inherently citrus forward. It's not a, like
Not at all.
because I know there's like some grapefruit beers and whatnot. Like if you told me that was like a lemon beer or grapefruit flavored beer, I'm like, okay, that makes sense. But like that's just a normal, just Kolsch style German. That's a German style beer, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like,
Cologne.
it's none of that's like inherently citrusy, but that's like a huge lemon bomb.
Yeah. I wish, in my years doing this, we've learned a lot of things, but the things that happen in cask are just mysterious. You just don't know. I wonder if it's repeatable. If we did another one, we'd have something different. I don't know.
Probably not.
Maybe not. I don't know.
I feel like it's hard to repeat. So out of all of the whiskeys you've made, do they all come out very consistently? So you make a Peralta bourbon. Do they all come out consistently, or does it change? Because I've had some conversations with a few other people, and they always say like that comes out differently no matter
does.
what.
It's
Like it's hard to
super-
repeat everything exactly the same.
Yeah, when we first started doing this, we thought we're going to do everything single barrel. In fact, we had a batch of our Peralta bourbon. The very first batch of label said small batch single barrel. We're thinking, that's going to be our thing.
That's a trendy word puzzle too. It's hard to be small batch and single barrel at the same time.
Exactly, because absolutely there's variation, and I think Peralta bourbon is a fantastic example of it, in that we use a tiny bit of these real specialty malts, and I don't know if it's variation in my process as much as I try not to, or if it's variation in the particular way the grains were made, or maybe they were exposed to the air a little bit more. I don't know, whatever, but there's variability batch to batch in that chocolatey back note, way beyond what's acceptable from one barrel to one barrel to one barrel.
Yeah.
And so we always blend the Peralta bourbon. We find a really chocolatey one and one that's otherwise good, but not so chocolatey. Mix them together. Just always at least 2 barrels with the Peralta bourbon. It's just variabilities, man.
When you're making a mainstay product, so it's okay that these two are like, those are limited releases, but like a mainstay product like those two, you kind of want to have a consistently, because you want people to go back and get. There might be flavor drift year to year. Like if I have a bottle that I bought in 2020 and their bottle I buy in 2023 next year, they might be slightly different, but like within a margin of error, just flavor drift over time.
The expectation, the consumer expectation, once you get into total wines or whatever, something like that, if you're selling at total wines, the expectation is that year to year it better be just about the same.
Yeah.
When I'm selling at the tasting room, nobody cares. It's different. And we say it's different. These explosive stuff, but who knows?
Yeah, because these don't go to places like that.
Right, completely different thing. So that's an expectation. It's very difficult for a small batch guy, particularly small batches we are. Limited number of casks to choose from, and try to maintain some semblance of consistency.
Oh, that explains it. Sugar Kitty did the whole thing, and I was like, I have no idea what that is. No worries, it's comments.
Okay.
Are you guys sure you don't have any questions? Any questions? We're gonna wrap this thing up in like 25 minutes. So speak now or forever hold your peace, because we're just gonna keep on shooting shit if you guys don't give us anything. So out of that, I thought I already asked this question, but I didn't get an answer. Which one of these limited releases has been your favorite so far, and why?
Well, so this guy is our 24th special release.
Yeah, and I think, is that the most recent one, or is it the...
No, the Einkorn.
Oh, it's the Einkorn.
Which are unfortunately on different time scales, because this is a special release where...
Oh,
whereas
that's
the Explorers Club, this is our 21st Explorers Club. So if you add them together, we made 46 weird and adventurous things.
Yeah.
So that's a lot to choose from. But what was my favorite? I mean, obviously the Twisted Blue Corn, 100% Blue Corn.
I think that's like the fan favorite, because I posted in the Facebook group, and I think 4 or 5 people said, "Ask Kelly to bring that back. I need more of that."
As I mentioned, we got some in cask, but we got to figure out what to do with it.
Peach
But we'll
brandy
do something fun.
Apple brandy,
Perhaps.
we could do better.
Sherry
than apple
cask
brandy.
would
Sherry,
be a good
I would
choice.
like sherry or port. I like port finish
Perhaps.
a lot.
Sure.
But I don't know if port's gonna go well with. I mean, it's corn, so
It should be okay.
yeah. Port might be overwhelming though, since it is corn.
It depends how long you leave it in. I mean, there's
Yeah.
some magic there too. It's a very expensive cask.
Oh, yeah,
This whiskey only spent about 90 days in that cask, so it's a pretty expensive way to essentially flavor it. What's left in there? If we left it in there for 2 years, it would have been completely different.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can play some games with it too. If you don't want an overwhelming port finish flavor, you can do that as well.
Well, it'll age quicker here in Arizona anyway. So like,
For sure.
well, like 6 months of secondary aging here is like years of secondary aging somewhere else.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously you're gonna get more of that wood, and with wood comes good and bad things.
Yeah,
but
for sure. Yeah, that's we've done enough fresh cask that I have a really good idea what's going to happen. I don't worry about it too much. But when we're doing a finishing cask, we really have to be careful with it, particularly in summertime when it's really hot. When things are hotter, they definitely get aging definitely happens faster.
Yeah.
So that's always an issue. But yeah, what's my favorite one? I don't know. This is a little before your time, but I think maybe our 7th or 8th Explorers Club release was
way before my time.
Yeah, right.
I think my first one that I joined the club with was the heralded Blue Corn.
Yeah, good timing.
Yeah.
Sucked you in.
I got a few of the previous ones that were still out at that time, but that was like the first one I signed up for.
Right. So 7 or 8, I don't remember which one it was Good Boy Wally. And this was
I've heard of people mention that one too. I forget what it is.
So it's a Wren House beer called Good Boy Wally. And I don't remember what the problem was, but they one of the guys was there talking to him. They said, "Hey, we got 2 pallets of this Good Boy Wally that for some reason was not up to their standard." I forget exactly what the problem was. And it was in cans, 1 pound, 16-ounce cans.
Oh, so it was just pallets of just
pallets
cans.
of cans, and they were going to throw it away. And it's amazing to me. They have beer insurance. If you have a brewery, you can buy beer insurance. So the beer was insured.
Well, don't you have insurance on these?
The fire insurance, but
Okay.
not I screwed it up insurance.
Not barrel. Okay.
So anyway, they were just going to get rid of this beer. They were going to throw it away. In fact, one of their concerns was that the aluminum went to a good home when they got done with it. But that meant they'd have to dump the beer out first. They said, "What do you want this beer?" I'm like, "Sure, we'll throw it in the still and see what happens."
Yeah.
That was our first time we'd ever worked with a brewery. We didn't know what was going to happen. And so we spent 2 days emptying cans into the still and then distilled it up. And it only sat in cask for about 8 months because the Good Boy Wally's got this big tropical hop flavor.
Yeah.
And we didn't want that to get consumed in the aging process. So 8 months was about enough to give it kind of some whiskey notes, and it was just this kind of magical hit. And it was just the wildest, weirdest whiskey you've ever had.
Did it have like a hoppy side of it?
Hop. It's hard to describe.
Okay.
I mean, again, this changed from the Kolsch hop to this lemon.
Yeah. I don't understand this. So
Yeah.
like at least a peanut butter porter that made sense because it was
Sure.
peanut butter.
Right. Yeah. That taste didn't morph.
Yeah. Like it was peanut buttery chocolate milk to me.
Right. And yet not like Screwball, for example.
Yeah,
Super
no.
sweet or just over the top. That was a whiskey with subtle peanut butter background. is fun. Anyway, so that was actually probably not one of my favorites, but certainly one of the ones that.
That and the Blue Corn, like the two ones I've actually heard a lot about.
Right.
Recently, obviously the Blue Corn, because that was more recently.
Right.
A lot of the people who still talk about the Good Boy Wally are like longtime fan favorites, or
exactly.
It's been here since day one.
Right. Yeah, that's been 3 years ago now.
Yeah.
So it's been a while. Yeah, we have a few others here. Where we should try cherry bombs all this time.
Yeah, I like the cherry bomb because I think it's a really solid. I really like this Infinity Cast though. That weird.
These two.
It's that chili note. It just doesn't make sense, but it's kind of fun and enjoyable.
Yeah.
Hey,
so
mods, can you take care of that, please? So speaking of Four Leaf, says, what future releases are you most excited about? And Four Leaf, this is also the people. So she's a huge Irish whiskey fan, and I told her about your single pot still.
Right.
The one that I don't truly love because it's very lavender and floral, and that's not really my style. I'm more of a chocolate and malty type thing, but she loves that kind of stuff. So Four Leaf, I'll also send you some of that.
Yeah, there you go.
I gotta send you hand deliver you some whiskey.
Wow, you're a good guy to know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So two things I'll mention to answer your question, Four Leaf. The first one, when we very first started this whole endeavor, we did a 3-day training course in Colorado, and we're out cruising around and looking at different distillers because Colorado's been a hotbed of craft distilling for a long time. And we went to this guy called Feisty Distilling outside of Boulder. Not Boulder. Where's New Belgium? What's next?
Not a clue.
And he had a bunch of casks, and he was kind of doing a lot of the same sort of things we are, just trying this and that. And he had a cask of millet whiskey, and it was so smooth. It just blew my socks off. And so I had wanted to do a millet whiskey for a really long time, and we did one of those last summer. So it's in cask. Unfortunately, it's 18 months away from even tasting to see if it's getting close to ready. But anyway, that's exciting to me. I'm anxious to get that one in a glass and see how it tastes. But to your point, for Clover, we have an Irish style whiskey, 100% malt, so a single malt, but done in the Irish style, meaning distilled 3 times.
Yeah,
which is kind
triple
of fun.
Distilled.
Yeah, I've never done that before. Triple pot distilled. Like reconfigured our pot so that it's just running right off the top of the pot, right through the line arm and down to the condensers. And did it 3 times, and I'll be honest, coming off the still, it was pretty flat because you still 3 times. You're pulling off a lot of the interesting stuff. But we'll see what happens. I'll keep an open mind, and casks are amazing things. We'll see what happens. So.
Yeah, and then Sugar Kitty is asking what barrels are behind us. I know it seems like it's a lot of everything. I mean, bourbon, single malt.
I see bourbon. I see Fossil Creek whiskey.
Get that single malt.
Some rye. Maybe we should pop it up at single malt.
I mean,
this is mostly single malt, but there is a mishmash of stuff.
I like that barrel. That brand new one. That looks
cool. At the top there. So that's the Gravity Assist bourbon. So we do a brew your own barrel program.
Okay.
And that's where a group of people, I think it was about 8 people, came in and basically we shepherd them through the process, and they make their own thing, and they get their own cask with their own logo. And can't quite see that on camera. Anyway,
that's way up there.
You want to taste a single malt?
Yeah.
It's be fun. I don't know if you can hear me back here.
They probably can't, but I'll kind of dictate.
You narrate.
Yeah, I'll narrate. Through. Hang it. Have you tried Adventurous yet? If not, I need to get you to just come down. Like literally, just come down. A Saturday or Sunday? Friday night? What are you doing Friday night, hanging? The Lost Dutchman was really a German. Is that true?
It is true.
Huh, I did not know that.
Back in the day.
Okay. Well, that's news to me. Yeah. Yeah, so when you started mentioning going to Colorado, I was like, Stranahan's.
Yeah, we went to Stranahan's.
My mind instantly goes to that's one of the things I love about single malts because like everyone knows, I'm a huge fan of American single malts. Not only the fact that I enjoy single malts themselves, but I love that it's more of the whole crafty, spirit side. Cheers.
Yeah, for sure.
You're right. It's kind of not super descriptive. Nice. What is that? Is it lemony? I mean, you can tell it's malty, but it's not
Yeah, very
really.
malty.
There's not anything really jumping out. What's the
Right.
proof on this? Supposed to be
It's probably north of 120 by now.
Yeah.
It's there's it's what's this particular cask is it's about 30 months old, so a little more than 2.5 years, and it's getting more complex.
Yeah.
But,
I get those that lavendery note, but it's more mellowed out compared to the unmalted barley.
yeah, that was a different animal.
Yeah, this
Right.
this is it's very mellowed out, malty, a little bit of lavender, a little bit of like a lemony, like citrus in there.
Right.
I kind of like it. I don't love it. It needs something more to it.
Yeah, I think this would be a great single malt if we had 5 years. But in
Yeah.
5 years, there'll be about a third left.
Yeah,
in
it'll
the
be
cask. It's just
the
too damn
angels are
hot.
going to take
Yeah,
all of it.
exactly. So my current plan is to do some
Finishing?
cask finishes.
Yeah.
I have about 500 gallons made of the same style, and we're gonna do some cask finishes, and we're gonna make it interesting.
Yeah.
Make it adventurous, one way or the other. It'll be good.
No, I mean, I remember I kind of floated the idea by you. Whether you use this or not, don't feel obliged to do it. But I think it would be fun to kind of do like the base spirit and then do a bunch of different finishings and be like, hey, this is where this took the whiskey.
Yep.
Obviously, it's not really a great, proof of concept for whiskeys moving forward because, like you said, once it hits the cask, everything changes. Whether you put you putting bourbon into port or malt into port, those are still going to go two different directions
Right.
no matter what.
Right.
So it's kind of hard to use as like a proof of concept, but I think as a consumer perspective, it would be fun to kind of be able to tell like non-finish and then like, oh, this is it when it went this direction. Oh, this
Yep.
is it when it was in an agricole rum barrel. Oh, this
Right.
is it when it was in a tequila barrel. Please don't put it in a tequila barrel.
Yeah, I don't think I'd do that, but
Hey, people have done that before. I
Yeah, I
don't
believe
get it, but
yeah.
that's rough.
Yeah, I agree with you. I thought it was a great idea when you suggested it. I've been stewing around about what to do about these casks. They're not bad. They're just not. Wow, they're not adventurous. That's my problem.
Yeah.
It's
It's very middle down the road. Like
Yeah.
for 120 plus, like this is something I could drink during the summer. I mean, it's a little proofy, but
Yeah.
the palate's just kind of.
Yeah.
There's not much going on.
Exactly.
It's very.
It needs a little excitement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Needs a little pizzazz.
Exactly.
Compared to all your products, this is the most
Right.
like middle down the road. I would say Irish style type malt.
Yeah, and that's these are if I look back, just people ask me what spirits didn't come out well and what would you screw up? And this is probably my biggest screw up ever is making such a boring single malt.
Mhm.
And the truth is I know how to make an interesting single malt. And we've done it before. So we've had one of the Explorers Club releases was a single malt.
Yeah.
But we didn't use boring malts. We used some caramelized malts and things like that. And it was an interesting single malt. It had a lot going on. And so we need to get back to that notion.
Yeah.
I've already got one batch, so a couple of casks filled, and we're going to kind of morph in that direction. Unfortunately, it's 2.5 years away.
Yeah.
So we'll get there. But
We can put in one of those things that goes like like the speed rapid aging things.
yeah, don't do that.
I don't know what those are called, but
Yeah,
I've
don't do
never
it.
had any good.
Exactly. Don't.
Hanging out of mine, my favorite so far out of the two club releases. So it's between right now off the top of my head, it's between this one, and then that peach the peach brandy finished corn whiskey.
Yeah.
Because that was it was so strong with that peach brandy.
Yeah. It came through
Like
a lot.
it was so lovely. I enjoyed the heck out of that.
Yeah.
That was a little desserty for an everyday kind of whiskey because it was so overpowering, like peach cobbler. But I loved it. I finished that last Thanksgiving
Was that right?
as my dessert whiskey.
Wow.
And I thought it was great. This one I've been loving a lot because this is like cherry. It's a nice rye. I think it's really balanced, and
Right.
then it has like a little bit of like a cherry smoke, like maltiness going on in there. And this one I tried for the first time again in the hot minute today, and I'm leaving the distillery with one because I love. I think that like
it's
peppery
really
side's fun.
It is. It's peppery, but
I was
not
describing this whiskey horrible.
Oh, is that right?
Yes.
So
bad.
It's all right.
No one noticed. It's okay.
Exactly. We sold some. It's okay. They'll take it home and they'll go, oh yeah, this is actually better.
Yeah. Next time I need to try all the things before I start talking about them.
Right.
I went off of like a very old memory of like, oh, that's nice.
Right. it really is nice, and it's grown on me. Some of these things, like I don't know if you remember the weeded bourbon we did maybe a year ago.
That one was. I didn't love that, but I don't love weeded bourbons. I'm not a huge fan of wheat, like the Icorn whiskey.
Right.
I'm okay with that one. I don't love it. I don't hate it.
Yeah.
I just think wheat gets a little funky to me. There's like some. I call it sour cream.
Huh?
Like a sour creaminess inside of the whiskey that I just don't love. I don't usually love a lot of wheated bourbons. I don't love a lot of wheat whiskeys.
Yeah. I don't disagree with you. And in fact, when we
first, I know you made it. I'm just being honest.
Well, again, we experiment with everything, and some of them work out great, and some of them don't. When we first put it in bottles, I was like, this is just okay. I wasn't very impressed, but the way it worked out, we ended up with about 150 bottles of that, and our Explorers Club only has about 100 guys.
Yeah.
So there were 50 bottles, and so you kind of work through them. And they were in the distillery or in the tasting room for 4 months as we sold them off. And toward the end of that 4 months, I had concluded that I really liked this stuff. It just grew on me as I was sampling it. Just, I don't know. It's funny how your perception of things changes.
Yeah. Yeah, because I know that probably would have been the first time I actually did a full-on tour, because I came by a few times, but the first time I did a tour with Alec, I planned on doing a whole not live stream, but a whole video of this, and then I just ended up being like, we're not working tonight. I'm just hanging out, we're getting drunk, we're enjoying, we're having a fun time, and that happens a lot whenever I try to do things outside of my studio. I'm like, okay, we're just gonna enjoy life. We're not gonna worry about working. We're not making content. We're just drinking this and having fun.
You came in with a camera with all these high plans,
and I
got set down somewhere.
Yeah, I did not touch it, but Alec loved it because he's a huge fan of weeded whiskeys, and I was just like, it's okay, I mean, I didn't dislike it, but it wasn't a bottle I was going to buy myself.
I say this all the time about the distilling business. There's a certain bar you have to clear, a certain quality bar, and you've got to be technically correct in order to be good. Once you get above good, there's so much variation. It's not like they're measurably better. Do you like it, or do I like it, or do you like it? It's so much about taste. Mm-hmm. So once you're technically correct, the rest of it is you like what you like, and that's why it's great to have a spectrum of whiskeys on your shelf.
It's also kind of so mood dependent, or like you don't know if you like one or the other based off of anything other than memory. If you're just having it, or unless if you're side by siding and comparing things, but if you're having I remember liking this one better than that. Trust me, I will tell you, you are wrong. I've been doing nothing but blinds recently, and boy, can I tell you, when you do things blind and you're just randomly poured a bottle, it is hard to guess them. And I feel so bad about talking bad mouth. I guess this is a little secret time, guys. But for my Advent, one of the bottles was a Costco peated American single malt, or the peated Scotch, the Isla Scotch or whatever. I remember liking that. When I tasted it in the Advent, I was like, this is horrible. And I don't know if it was just my mood. I didn't want Scotch or anything, but I did not like it at all. I hated it. So it's so mood dependent, and that's why it's fun to have different things, because like I said, sometimes I like going peated, sometimes I like going rye, sometimes you like bourbon, sometimes you like American single malt, sometimes you want a wheat whiskey, you know?
Yep, and that's what's so cool about whiskey in general, and I think craft done properly is that there's just a huge variety of interesting flavors you can get into, and that makes it great fun.
Yeah, this one's kind of growing on me. Like it wasn't blown away, but like it's not bad. It's just not miraculous. It's like, I mean, it's good. It's just not great.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to be blown away, and it's just not doing that to me.
This is what I've been saying. It's not adventurous.
Yeah,
Right? It's just a kind of.
We need to crank that up to 11.
Exactly. Or like 4. You need to dial it for sure.
We'll make that
For
happen.
sure. Yeah. I think some finishes. It'll be interesting. I don't know if it's ever going to be awesome. It'll be interesting.
Could be a nice muscatel finish. What is that? Do you know what that is? It sounds like
sounds
cognac.
familiar.
Yeah,
it does sound like a cognac.
It sounds Frenchy.
Sounds
For the
French.
Paulton and the Lost Dutchman for the labels on. Yes, hang it. Seriously. Let me know whenever. I'll go here with you. I live 5 minutes away. We can make it happen. Yeah. Hangin is one of the few people in my chat constantly who is actually from Arizona.
Oh, there you go.
So I don't think he's tried your stuff yet, but he needs to.
Get out of here, man.
Yeah. I owe him like a bunch of whiskeys of like about a year of me being like, let me know when you're around. I'll give you some whiskey. And then at this point, I own samples of every single whiskey I own. Cheers, Mr. Lopez.
All right, what do you want to try?
Let's do. So I've been drinking the cherry bomb a lot. So let's do the 99.
Let's go off the rails here.
Yeah.
I'm running out of glasses.
I mean, you can reuse.
Yeah.
Not that it's ideal, but.
Yeah. Yep. Should let you pour. I don't know how much you want.
No.
I haven't had dinner yet.
I have. I made the smart decision.
Well played.
Yeah, because I don't like doing much drinking until we
Yeah.
eat.
This one's so interesting.
Muscatel is a sherry.
Okay, that
Ooh.
sounds right.
I mean, it does smell kind of
So sherry.
beery. There's a
Maybe.
little, it's slightly beery.
So Muscatel is a sherry. How is it a variety? What's special that makes it Muscatel?
Yeah, it's like a lemony wheat.
Yeah. It's just different.
Yeah, it's so interesting.
Yeah.
Like it should not be that like strong with the lemon though. Like it honestly tastes like lemon flavored whiskey.
Yeah, it does. And yet there's no flavor to it unless you call hops flavor. Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, but this is I'm not gonna say names because I don't like crap talking, but I have a American single malt that tastes nothing like it solely tastes like hops. It is 100% hops. Wow. It is horrible.
So it's an American single malt made from a beer, probably.
I don't know. I don't want to say anything more because then it's not going to say who it is. But it's a crafty American single malt from the Pacific section of the country, and okay, so it leans floral.
No.
Sherry, floral.
In that case, that's a pretty good idea. I could see that. Some
desserty, jasmine, orange, honey.
Okay. I could see that being a good top note to that single malt. It's got a nice base to it. It just doesn't have, there's not a lot of dimensions to it. So
the base kind of leans that direction anyways, because it's not super fruity. It's more kind of floral and malty.
Right.
Because most American single malts are either heavily malty or slightly fruity and kind of light. I don't get a lot of very lavendery floral type, flavors off of a lot of that stuff.
Sure.
Or at least my opinion.
Yeah. It's tasting this stuff. That's all. We could have a whole separate discussion about that. Jeez. And I will be the first to say that my palate. It's a special skill. To really be able to discern notes accurately and with a couple of small tastes and come away with real a meaningful impression.
Yeah.
And then there's another skill that takes what you've sensed and turns it into words that I can communicate to somebody else. And it's hard.
Yeah. It's It's not super easy. I'm getting better at it over time.
Well, I think it's interesting
But-
you're doing these blind things.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
pretty neat.
That's why I love doing it, because one, it challenges you to kind of like think about things like objectively too. Like you're not thinking about the label, you're just thinking about the actual whiskey itself.
Yeah.
Like last year, me and Alec did the same exact thing I'm doing by myself this year. And I thought your bourbon was your rye, and your rye was your bourbon.
How interesting.
Yeah, because I was blinded with the bourbon, and I just got like this chocolatey spice, and I was like, "Oh, that's Adventurous Stills." And I put down the glass, and I was like, "I don't even have to smell this or taste this again." I was like, "I know exactly what it is," and I ended up being completely wrong that day, because I guess the wrong category, the wrong proof, all that jazz. And it'd be like that.
Yeah, it is. There's a huge amount of marketing in whiskey. Not only what you see just out in the public sphere, but on the label, and companies try to make you think you're going to get a certain thing out of when you try this whiskey, and it changes the way you.
The whole giant cherry on it. Everyone at that event we did was like, "I want to try that," and it's because it has a giant cherry on it. Everyone thinks it's cherry flavored whiskey.
Right.
It's not. There's some cherry flavors in the back of it, but that's because of the cherry wood smoked.
Right. And
It's mostly cask strength rye whiskey, though.
That's right. It is. But the reason why I called it cherry bomb was I had zero expectation of this much cherry came out of it. This is a 90% rye flour and 10% cherry wood smoked malt. 10%, what can that possibly do?
Yeah.
It doesn't really taste smoky, subtly smoky.
Yeah, it's like more roasty than smoky.
Yeah, right. It's just kind of warm. But that much cherry come out of that, I was kind of blown away. In fact, it was a bit of a revelation to me. I've always kind of been off on the notion of smoked malts, but suddenly I'm kind of intrigued by this notion of small amounts of smoked malts, just to add kind of nuance without adding a big smokiness to it.
Yeah.
When I think of smoked malts, I think of Scotch.
Something that's
aggressive. Yeah, exactly. But just a tiny amount gives it this warmness with these other flavors that carry through it. Boy, that's a whole new playground. So I'm excited about that.
I mean, there's a lot you can do with, not only because you do a lot of playing around inside the still and whatnot.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I probably disagree with that. I think pretty much everything gets distilled the same. I strive for technical perfection in the distilling process.
Well, okay. Let me reframe what I was saying. You play around in the mash. I guess that's probably more. I always think of everything like pre-still, post-still, and like cask, and then to bottle. Like after it's been blended and whatnot. And you do a lot of playing around in the mash area. I guess that would have been a better way to work.
Yeah, I think the things that we mostly experiment with are the mashing process. The grains that go into the mashing process, and then the aging. Those are some fun things. Just our standard products go into cask for 2.5 years and they come out. That's it.
Yeah,
it's really not very complicated. And then we blend them.
2.5 years in Arizona is a lot of time. Like I don't see most. Even big Texas distilleries, a lot of their stuff is at most 2.5, 3 years old, and then they're releasing it. I know you mentioned Iron Root. They have one that's approaching 8 years, but it's in I think an 83 gallon drum or something like that. And
well, you can see most of these casks that we're looking at here are 20s and 15s. We do mostly 30s now. Fossil Creek is aged and used cask. The Almall is aged and used cask. So these are older casks that have been sitting on for a while. And 30-gallon casks are what allow us to extend out to 2.5 years. It used to be 2 years. We'd like to go to 53s, but they don't fit in my racks.
Okay, so that's more of a logistic thing.
Exactly. Yeah, I can't get nearly as many casks of whiskey in 53-gallon casks, even though every cask is kind of more volumetrically efficient. They just don't stack on my racks very well.
Yeah.
So
you're kind of limited to your actual space.
Yeah, 30 is kind of where I'm at.
Okay. Yeah. And do you find when you go to a smaller cask, what do you find the difference of aging in a smaller cask versus a larger cask? I know obviously there's going to be more oak impact because it's going to be more surface area to the actual whiskey, but what other things do you get out of that outside of oak? Like the bad parts, I guess, would be.
Well, I mean, talk about the bad part. The fundamental thing is the cask gets smaller. The surface area ratio, surface area volume goes way up.
Yeah.
And more surface area gives you a much darker spirit in a short period of time, and it massively increases your angel share.
Okay.
So small casks lose tons of angel share compared to big casks. You talked about the Ironwood guys in their 8-year whiskey in an 83-gallon plungeon or whatever they call those, the bigger ones.
Yeah, the big like French hogshead or whatever.
Yeah, something like that. You can get away with that in a bigger cask because the angel share ratio becomes smaller as the cask gets bigger. So that's kind of the fundamental thing. But in terms of flavors, I know that there are some. But to put a fine point on it, I don't know that I could.
So it's more of just like a business prospect type side that you think it affects.
I'm sure that there are nuances between 10-gallon casks and 20 and 30. We did one of the 53-gallon casks that we do have. We put a bourbon in it, and it's been in there for 2.5 years, and it's pretty different. There's way more fruity flavors in there. Because it's a bigger cask, it needs to sit longer, and I'm pretty interested to see where it goes. I think it'll probably be 3.5 years before it comes out. But I haven't done enough of it to really have a good answer.
Have an actual baseline.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I really know the difference. Anecdotally, the guys in Delbach do. I think they're 100% 10-gallon casks, or maybe it's 15.
They use super small barrels. They have them all, and they have them stacked vertical instead of.
They're on their heads.
Yeah,
interesting. Okay.
I don't know if that changes anything at all. But
we do that some too. We've got 16 bourbon barrels sitting. It's one 30-gallon bourbon barrel sitting on it. And I just started doing that last summer, just for space.
Yeah, you ran out of space.
So I don't know the answer there either. But we'll find out.
They have them all.
So they're all standing up.
Yeah, standing up, and they stack them on top of each other that way.
Yeah, we do the same. So Delbach is, there's going nationwide now, and so their volumes are going way up, and the logical thing to do would be go to bigger casks, but they have
theoretically.
Well, from a 10-gallon cask costs $250. A 30-gallon cask costs $300. And
that's crazy how expensive they cost.
Well, yeah, but I mean the difference. 10-gallon cask is $250, 3 times as much at $50 more. A 53-gallon cask might actually be less than a 30-gallon cask. Yeah, because they make so many of them.
Yeah, because they're just so used to making 53s, because that's kind of like the business standard.
Yeah, that's my point. From a logical business standpoint, Delbach should go to 53s now. That's the logical thing to do. But from a flavor standpoint, I think they're afraid they don't want to change their flavor profile, so they don't want to change it. So I'm sure there are differences there as you change cask sizes. I just can't give you the firm answer on what they are.
Just gotta clear out all this space and just start putting 53 gallons right here.
Yeah, well,
make it work.
There's a lot of volume up here.
There's a lot of unused space.
It's totally true.
We can make it happen. Yeah. Obviously, that's a huge infrastructure project, but worth it.
Yeah, exactly. We'll see. It might happen.
Now, that being said, we are going to have to wrap this up since we are getting a little bit later on in the night. Before we close this up, any final questions from the audience? Because I know me and Kelly, we can talk forever, and we're likely going to continue talking after this. So any sort of questions and whatnot, if you want to try this stuff and you don't live in Arizona, email me. If you live in Arizona, email me. We'll square away some time. I'll come with you to the distillery.
Yep, we have a great tasting room here. You can have a craft cocktail. We've got some really good cocktails on our menu. We do a fun tour and tasting routine. We didn't have a chance to, you didn't see anything except casks today, but we've got handmade stills and lots of cool things to look at. So come do the tour, try some cocktails, check us out.
Yeah, your column still is like one of a kind. I've never seen a column still like that.
Yeah,
that's something else right there.
All of these things, when you realize that they're all hand fabricated, we built all of our stills. Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes I look back like, what the hell were we thinking?
Okay, so you guys built all of these by hand?
Yep, every single piece of equipment built
that's
by
a lot of work.
It is a lot of work. Yeah, people ask me, because copper stills, they don't last forever. Right?
Yeah.
How long is it gonna last? I always say, well, I hope it lasts longer than I do, because I don't want to do it again. It was long.
You don't want to rebuild it.
I don't want to do it again.
So, that being said, one final question / story. I know, obviously, you said it kind of just happened on a whim of you deciding to do this, and then from there, just kind of kept on snowballing until it became a business, and then now
Yeah.
you're managing it and taking care of it with you and your wife, and a
Yeah.
small team of people and whatnot.
Yeah.
So, where did you kind of learn? Because I know you come from a engineering background. So, how'd you learn how to become a distiller? How'd you figure out how to make good products that weren't gonna, kill people or make them go blind? Like
Right.
where'd you learn outside of obviously, I guess, trial and error?
Yeah, sadly, So I mentioned we did a 3-day distilling course before we even signed the lease
Mhm.
in Colorado. We learned just enough to become dangerous, right? We
Yeah.
felt like, wow,
Just enough to
we learned.
almost blow up the whole building.
yeah, we learned that some things you can definitely do wrong. But sadly, yeah, the vast majority was trial and error. And if you came in here in 2017 when we were trying to ramp up and watched us for a week to try to get through some of these mashes, oh my God, it was a nightmare. We really, really struggled. Every time we do it, once a week we'd get together and talk about, well, how'd things go? And it would be a mash and a distillation, and there'd be a laundry list of, oh my God, this is a disaster. That's really hard. This is crazy. What are we doing? And so we try to tackle the things good, and each week it got maybe a little bit better. And finally, after about 3 years, mostly things finally worked. And it's just sadly, it's a real trial and error experience of what we've done here. It would be much smarter, would have been much smarter for us to go spend $10,000 on a 2-week course and have really learned some things. But on the other hand, the way we learned it, when you learn things the hard way, you learn them, man. They're just great. I could talk about this stuff in my sleep.
Yeah, you dream about distilling.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll be honest, I kind of chafe at the notion of a master distiller. I feel like I hardly know anything, because every time I learn something, I realize, wow, it's so complicated. There's just a lot of things that go into it.
There's so much more behind it that you didn't even think about.
Yeah. Okay. I know we're trying to wrap up.
Oh,
I'll tell you this little story.
I don't actually have things to do.
If I drink anymore, I'm not going to be able to talk.
Yeah, I was like, probably shouldn't drink much more. But
so about a year ago, I engaged with a professor at ASU, and he was going to help us try to understand what was producing so much of the heads, so much of the methanol.
Yeah.
And what really was in the heads. And because you smell it, oh my God, you smell the acetone, you smell the methanol, you smell things that smell like spray paint, you smell things that smell like model airplane glue. I don't know what the hell's in there. And I thought it would be interesting to try to get a handle on it. And so we were working through some things, and I won't go into the details too much. But one of the things he told me that I thought was fascinating was he described the process when we take a beer that's fermented on grain, which is what we do in the whiskey business. So all the grains are in the mash while it's fermenting, which is different from the brewing industry, where what they call lauter, which means the liquids get strained through the grains and the grains stay behind, and only the liquid goes on to the fermentation stage.
Okay. I didn't know that, actually. I assumed it was all the same, just like when you were talking about distilling all the beers. I was like, well, technically beer is the wort that you then distill.
Precisely, it
eventually.
is. Yeah. But in the whiskey business, we use weird grains like corn and rye in particular, to some extent wheat, that are just sticky and gummy, and they clog up a lauter stream in a heartbeat. You just can't lauter them. So the standard process in whiskey is to leave the grains in the whole time, through the fermentation and in the first distillation. And so what that means is that the yeast are exposed to all these pieces of grain and the chaff and all the different stuff that comes along with it. And so you get some different fermentation products, which in a beer would be bad. That's the reason you lauter.
Yeah.
But we distill it, and but then the other step is it goes into a still, and it sits in that big 600-gallon pot still and boils for like 10 hours.
Yeah.
And when that happens, there's all kind of chemistry happening. And this professor said that he'd been down some paths similar before, that's why I engaged with him. He said that there's an amazing mishmash of chemistry going on in there. And some of these things have psychoactive impacts. He mentioned specifically, and this is the one I remember, GHB, the date rape drug. There are tiny fractions of that stuff in the mash. just because crazy chemistry happens. And so, it's just kind of amazing to me that there's so much going on that we don't really know about. That this, I guess, kind of where I was going with this. People say things like, "No, I can't drink tequila because it makes me go crazy."
Yeah.
I always thought that was bullshit because alcohol is alcohol.
Yeah.
Except that when you start off with agave hearts and distill it and then mash it, and distill it, who knows? Maybe there's some little chemical in there that makes you go a little nutty. It seems possible. So,
it's all possible.
yeah.
Oh, no worries. I'll wrap this up.
Yeah.
Alrighty, folks. Well, thank you all for coming in, hanging out, and whatnot. Over on your left, my right, we got Kelly shutting off what looks to be the mash tun.
I was trying to turn it off.
We'll just let it rip for the next few minutes. But thank you all for coming in, hanging out.
Hope you had fun.
Again, please do us a favor. YouTube things, like, comment, subscribe. Helps us out a ton. Seriously appreciate the support. In the comments below is the link to the Adventurous Stills website. If you're local and you're interested in checking out a few more things, go down there, check them out. You can get some of these, whiskeys there, and you can select, in-store pickup and whatnot, and come by. And I think you ship now, right?
In the state of Arizona, we ship. Absolutely.
Yeah, so you can also get it shipped to your house. Obviously, assume that there's more fees there because that's how that world runs. But yeah, thanks for coming and hanging out. If you want to try some of this stuff outside of Arizona, email me. We could probably come to some terms. But thank you for coming in, everyone. Thank you, Kelly, for sitting down and talking to me and open up your distillery to me. But that's a wrap. I'll see you later, guys. Cheers.